back to what we saw in the film today. So we're very excited to hear from him. Next, I'd love to introduce Naima Dhore. And she is the executive director of the Somali American Farmers Association, where she is supporting the next Somali American farmers. She's a first-generation farmer. She's an activist and educator committed to look after Mother Earth and community building. And she's an amazing leader in our local farm and food systems landscape here. She's been actively participating in essential advocacy just this last legislative session to support emerging farmers. So thank you so much for joining us, Naima. And then lastly, we would like to welcome Levi Welbourn. Levi is an emerging farmer who recently moved to Minnesota from Chicago. He's working with the Latino Economic Development Center to support emerging farmers, addressing disparities and dismantling social and economic barriers that they face. He is new on our local scene, but he has deep experience, and I was just amazed and inspired to see his very moving testimony earlier this legislative session, also supporting emerging farmers. So we're very excited to have him here today. So now we're going to let each of them introduce a little bit of their background themselves before we get into a Q&A portion. So maybe Aison, I'll get it to you first.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And I'm so honored to be with farmers because this is my work in the Philippines to empower farmers through the law. So I'm glad that this is here and has documented a lot of my work. And in fact, our love story revolves around mostly farmers and protest. So thank you very much, babe. The story of the Sumilao farmers represents an ongoing battle against intergenerational and systemic injustice experienced by indigenous farmers in the Philippines and in the world. I first encountered Sumilao farmers as a third-year law student volunteering at Balaod, Mindanao, which is the Kakapakaw, and followed through the case as a lawyer, as a legal lawyer. My relationship with them shaped my perspective on how I see the law and the relationship to development, especially in rural areas. At that time, the farmers had just lost a crucial case in the Supreme Court when I went there on procedural technicality. So they were mentioning that in the film. And the decision of the executive secretary was deemed final and could not be overturned by the president. So it was the first time that even if there was a Supreme Court decision, the government can move if it wants to in favor of the farmers. And achieving major victories in their struggle for land ownership and economic opportunities for more than 2 decades and still counting. So after the Sumilao farmers' march, when the land was given to them, it did not end. So there was it inspired the passage of a law. So they were chanting passage of the agrarian reform law and inspired other farmers who were still waiting for the law to be implemented to also walk. And walking has become a symbol for them to assert their rights. So because of this, I was inspired to work with the farmers. As a developmental lawyer, we work with them. As you see, we walk with them. We usually do not go in front, but we empower them through the law. So I was just amazed to see it in the film, but this one is just the middle. So there are actually 8 rounds of challenges that has been going on. And from the Supreme Court decision to the San Miguel case until to the passage of the law and eventually now they have the land. The threat is still ongoing. Even if they have the land, they still need support in marketing, especially in marketing. But what's nice is that the future farmers now have the opportunities to manage the land and earn from it. However, the pressure from agribusiness, big agribusiness corporations are still there because the system of uh, 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 capitalism still has a pressure on them to give up the land. In fact, when I visited last year before this fellowship, actually they gave me this band. No? This is a band that was, they say, for protection. So always remember the walk that we had, 1,700 kilometers. No one was sick or fell during the walk. But after the walk, when the capitalism and other landowners who are in Congress pushed back, um, Karine was slain in his farm. So he saw Karine. And but that did not stop the farmers from pushing for their land, and other farmers also from supporting the law that will give them the land, back the land. So with this, I'd like to also say that your struggle can lead to victory if the people behind you and with you will always be there to support. So let's continue the fight.
Naima, I was looking up the distance that the farmers had walked in the Philippines is about the same distance that it would take to walk from Naima's farm in Cambridge to DC. It's really very significant walk. It was 1,056 miles. For those of you who need to translate kilometers, I had to do a conversion for that. Naima, could you please give a little bit of your background?
Well, thank you so much, and I'm honored to be here and join you this beautiful evening. And I'm so moved watching the film and encouraged in sending all my love and prayers and solidarity to the farmers and farmers everywhere. Thinking about my farm right now, but also thinking about the farmers in struggle globally, and just really our story is pretty long, so I'll keep it short and brief. So my husband and I have been farming together. I feel like we started pretty small inside our tiny apartment. Quickly realized that's not sustainable, and I quickly transitioned to a community garden. Long story short, we were part of an incubator farm that, you're talking about distance. We were commuting from Eden Prairie to Stillwater, and we did that 3 years with small children. Mostly the last 2 years, me with 2 small children, you can only imagine, 494 traveling back and forth 4 or 5 times a week. And every year I promise I will not sign up for another year of farming, but we did that for 3 years. Fast forward, we farmed in urban setting. I do work with the community, mostly elderly, in South Minneapolis. The light is hitting me beautifully. I feel like I need a diva fan and ready to sing or something, but it's just been a really beautiful experience. We are first generation farmers, so we don't have any farming background. Just to give you a background of my family, after a long years of struggle and moving around and commuting back and forth, long distance, we were able to secure land last year, 20 acres. I see Karen. But to your comment about, even once you gain access to the land, there's still struggles in terms of resources and maintaining, because it does require a lot of maintenance. If you're dealing with 20 acres, it's not easy. But the moment for me that I told my parents, my immigrant parents, like, this is what I want to do, they're like, you're crazy. On top of that, going rural with our babies, our grandbabies, this is wild. Is when I realized, during my farmers market time in the beginning when we were doing the incubator farm, is that I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, and I did not see cultural food. So something just, the light went off or on, or whatever the phrase is, and I said, wow, why is that? And really just brought me back to a lot of the things back home and here, and just, coming to America and just really navigating and just going along with the flow of just this fast-paced lifestyle, and really the disconnect from home and my culture, my food, and the community. I want it all back. I wanted to some degree, right? So that's why my husband and I, my family, decided to pursue farming. Still doesn't pay the bills. We still juggle other jobs too, just like many small-scale farmers. But my passion is really trying to grow cultural food. So I've been experimenting with a lot of crops over the years, whether it's urban setting, rural, and continue to do that, especially with this rapid climate change that we are dealing with. As you know, I'm able to really experiment with food crops that do really well, especially the drought. And we've been having drought the last several years. So, like, for instance, millet, I'm really passionate about millet as a staple food back home in Somalia. And I was sharing with you some pictures of my millet, and those of you that are not familiar with millet is basically a grain, and can turn it into a flour, or borscht, what we call it, and have it early in the morning, which is a great, great breakfast starter for those of you that are interested in trying. And it's gluten-free, and it's just good for you, and it's just great for our system, our ecosystem. So I can go on and on and on. Once I start talking, I get comfortable. I can't stop talking. So I will stop right there, and I hope to share more. Thank you.
That's exactly why we asked you to be part of this panel. So thank you. Levi, could you share a little bit about your journey and your background, how you came to this work?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh. Sorry about that, y'all. How's it going? My name is Levi Welbourn. I use he and pronouns. Yes, I'm fairly new to farming, to be honest with you. I'm an emerging farmer. I'm a proud Afro-Latino, queer, disabled farmer. And this work has called to me in so many different ways. One side of my family are from the South of North Carolina. They are white. My other side of my family is from Dominican Republic. I'm Black, Afro-Latino, from the Caribbean, so these are things that hold dear to me. Food always was a connector, always in my life. Recipes I wanted to share with my family, my friends. I loved hot peppers, I loved tomatoes, but I had so many of my friends who were like, ugh, like, I don't like this produce. I hate tomatoes. What are you talking about? Like, it's the freshest food. They're like, but it tastes acidic. I was like, but have you had a fresh tomato from the garden? Because I had a grandma who was like, went to the garden every morning, here we go. And so then I became that person that loved their life. I was like, okay, let me slice this tomato up for you, taste it, nothing on it. And having like the shock and like the amusement of like, oh my gosh, I've never had this. And seeing people connect back to food, I was like, oh, I love this. There's something special here. The journey for me as a farmer, I worked in a lot of public health. I was an advocate for BIPOC, LGBTQ, and disabled communities through public health, through food. I worked with a lot of homeless communities, making sure that they had access to food, access to having their voices heard, especially from the city of Chicago. I like to be vulnerable when I talk, so through this time, there's a lot of stress. I have multiple sclerosis, so that's why I walk with the cane. I wanted to be creative in ways that I could still be active and move my body and connect with myself. So one day my friend told me, they're like, hey, why don't you volunteer to farm? In my mind, I was like, that seems kind of a little bit, like I thought it was like walking, but they're like, no, try and see that. So one day I did that and I found an urban farm in Chicago. And the moment I had my hands in the soil, I was like, whoa, I felt connected to something. I love this. I love the work. I love being out in all the weather and the rain, waking up, hearing the birds. There's a beauty of it. But then also the inspiration of the farm workers I got to learn from and be inspired from and work alongside is seeing the barriers and the challenges that we have. Seeing even just the physical barriers that we have at the end of the day where like my friends wanted to go out and have fun. I was like, my body's gonna pass out. I've been doing this for a while. But seeing the beauty of it, but being able to have a collective and saying, how can we change that? So now I'm in Minnesota. I moved here recently in December. I also went to school up in Duluth, so I'm used to your weather here. I love it. My work here now, I work at the Latino Economic Development Center. I'm a regional food systems coordinator, so that's a lot of words. Basically, my job is building a beautiful mycelium network, if y'all are Fun Guy fans out there. Building this connection of farmers to know that we're all together, so we're not isolated, that we can hear about these struggles, but also know about the resources that are available for you, bringing back empowerment for land access, funding, resources, technical assistance, education, because we all deserve that. Especially our BIPOC indigenous members who this has been a systematic, I'd like to call it out systematic racism in the system that has been breaking this down. And I like to call that out, the uncomfortability of being like, that's our history, but what can we do moving forward? How can we collectively make a brighter, empowered future for us? So yeah, that was a long-winded intro, but that is what I am empowered to do, and also it's just an honor to sit here with leaders, because they are what I aspire to be. I'm very new to this, so like this group here and all the members, even the Midwestern Color Collective, everyone at Big River Farms, like I look up to them. Part of farming is learning from each other, and so our stewards, our elders, everybody, our ancestors before and after us, those are people I want to connect with, and even you, farmers or non-farmers, this is how we build this bright future together. So thank you.
So Aison, as someone who can bridge the experience that you had and what you saw in the Philippines and your organizing that you did there, I'd love if you could share any lessons or strategies that you think could be effective that we could bring to our movement here. As you've been with us for the last few months since the fall and have been following along on our journey of advocacy here, is there anything that we can take from your movement in the Philippines and try to apply in our own situation here?
Thank you. In the Philippines, and the farmers here, when I attended the conference of emerging farmers, there was a obvious connection that the land is very crucial as a component of smallholder farmers, as what Levi said. Smallholder farmers produce food, and they also have practices that preserves the planet. So it would be a good idea to really strengthen the organization of smallholder farmers, the emerging farmers, and try to shape the policies that the government is proposing and passing. So I'm glad to witness how the mini-ag network are able to participate in the legislative processes where they really give their inputs, and the government representatives are listening. So that is a good environment. But somewhere along the way, there are cracks happening, and some things are very controversial. So I hope that you connect with the people also, because public opinion is very important, and I see in the struggle of the Sumilaw farmers, even if there was already a Supreme Court decision, there were laws there that favor the farmers, but they are not implemented because the ones implementing the laws are either co-opted by big landowners or big ag corporations. So I think that it's good to engage political process, like farmers running in positions in government, and farmers leading the positions in implementing the policies. Aside from shaping the policies, also the implementation policies. And of course, develop the movement with community. Like our farmers are growing old already. So I'm so happy to see young farmers. And also, in the community, there are young people who do not know how to plant or haven't seen a coconut farm. Now you see it, or a farm. I think it's a noble mission to bring them back to the farm and cultivate it in a manner that is not destroying the future generations' chance of survival by practicing earth-friendly farming.
I think that connects really well to what I wanted to ask Naima about, since you're focusing on working with the next generation of farmers. And I was wondering, what was your inspiration, not just to be an individual farmer, but to found SAFA, the Somali American Farmers Association, and what you see as the mission of that connection and that organization?
So just to give you a background, as many of you know, Minnesota has the largest Somali community, and like I said earlier in my intro, there was a disconnect, right? So once you migrate here, time goes by. Even for me, I recall going to the market every day with my family back home. It's just a lot of nostalgic moments that I'm having right now, being at the farm and planting tomatoes, planting something with my children, and just remembering those beautiful time where we were communal, like growing food together as a family, as a community. I would go to our neighbor and grab eggs, and go a couple of neighbors down and grab milk. And there was always this beautiful exchange in resource. Everything was fresh, everything was shared. And so the community was really craving for that, but you got to start from somewhere. And because my people, my community live in the city, there's not a whole lot of green spaces in our city. So, which is another conversation for another panel. But and so I was lucky enough to take over the space at Home Towers, which is part of Minneapolis Public Housing Authority here in South Minneapolis, and really support that community in a way that they can see the potential in that space. It's 1/8, and you can imagine what you can grow in that space, and with our short growing season here, and it's just been a really beautiful experience. And now we have more participants every year. The elders are really engaged, and they're really excited what they can do with their assigned plots. In fact, they kicked me out last year. They're like, "You're not growing food for us. We're gonna manage our own plots." And now I'm trying to keep up and trying to find space to cultivate, because we're running out of space. I think I'm starting to get myself in trouble with management, but and that's the beauty, right? So they're able to come down from their units, and they congregate in the evening around 6 o'clock, and I can hear them sharing stories and talking to neighbors that they would probably not even say hi to each other. And this is a complex that they share together. And so for them to come together and share stories and just talk and share information is such a beautiful and needed. And same applies to my family farm. I'm in a rural area, and just really getting my neighbors energized. They're like, what are they up to today? They'll just drive by. And it's just been a really beautiful connection making with them and really getting them excited about what's coming in that area, because it is really important for all of us, no matter what background you are, to have access to fresh produce, and we really need to localize as much as we can. I know that because we are in a state where we're limited with time in terms of growing food, I think there's so much potential. And speaking of resources and really encouraging young people, the next generation, and their creativity is just mind blowing, right? So I feel like investing in like high tunnels, we grow a lot of food in high tunnels. Although we only have one now, but historically we had like 4 high tunnels. These are ranging from 30 by 100. So if you're not familiar with high tunnels, it's basically a season extension where you grow food and hope for the best. But I'll stop right there. Hopefully I covered her question.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, the community building through food is so evident in your work, and it's really wonderful to hear. And Levi, since you are newer to Minnesota and you're coming from that farmer and organizer perspective, I was wondering what stands out to you about the context in Minnesota and what opportunities you see to kind of expand the emerging farmer movement that's happening here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, sorry, thank you. Every time. I'm new to this, young. Thank you for being with me. I think I see so much potential. I mean, coming into Minnesota, I just moved here in December, and that was a lot of the movement with the emerging farmer conversation, and after the lawsuit and the kind of change of the wording and what that looks like.
It may be that not everyone here knows about
Oh
that.
yes, I would love to explain it. Yes, okay. I love like facial expressions, nods, or like views. So I love that too. So but to give a little digestible debrief of this is, so basically emerging farmers, the definition is kind of category like umbrella term for BIPOC, women, veteran, disabled, LGBTQ members that are farmers, because we saw through studies that there's a lot of barriers that those groups have gone through. So there is a whole department through the Minnesota Department of Ag that represents this group of farmers, but recently we had a white male farmer come along and say that, hey, because of this language, this is actually racist against me, and takes away a lot of opportunities for me to buy my own farm. There's a lot that goes with that, and a lot of discussion, which I want to open that up. But basically, that created a lot of movement within the Capitol, being like, do we have to change the wording? Do we have to do this because of the weight that this has, not only for Minnesota, but for all farmers, right? Because not only is this saying now it's an issue of racism, which if you look, again, emerging farmers is not only within race, it's also through different things, but seeing the importance of this. What does this mean for our future farmers? So I really felt a calling because of the definition of emerging farmers is all that I am and all that I aspire to be as a farmer. And I felt like, I wanted to speak out for our communities. To be real with you, I've done a lot of legislation work in Illinois with a lot of our representatives, but this is the first time I testified. But I just felt like the need, I felt like, my ancestors and the farmers were walking with me into that room. It wasn't just me speaking. And so I think it's just important through that movement of understanding why this group has to be represented. Not only why we have to fight for it, to me, it's because this is a fight through generations. This is not the first time that this has came up. This is not also in the last hundreds of years, this is centuries. So this movement, as we see here, like that resilience, that powerful movement that is through us. And so I see it as that's a fight we need for our future generation of farmers. A farmer that looks like me, I've never seen that. We talked earlier about resources, about where can I find those resources, especially being a farmer of color, you know? So I think it's really important that we stand for that. We make a big announcement with our government why that's important, but for each other. Land access is difficult. I have this conversation with my family. My family's from the South, North Carolina. They're also white. That's why I say y'all. You'll hear the Southern come out of me. But I have the same conversation. I said, I want to buy this farm. I've seen Nordstrom's farm. I want that. I've seen tractors. I want that. I want cows. Oh, and as the dairy farm? Yes. But then I realized, unfortunately, by the system of what we're taught, also the melanin in my skin, that's not possible. Or there's a lot more challenges in the way for me to make that possible. And that was also something for me to learn in that process. When those are conversations I continuously have, I think it's important to have. And so through the work with emerging farmers, we have the Emerging Farmers Conference. I think those are beautiful moments because these are times where all of our farmers can come together and provide this education, provide the solidarity. Be like, hey, actually, I go through that too. Are you serious? I thought I was alone. I thought I'm on my acres, hundreds and hundreds of acres away from me. If we haven't, I would love to have 100 acres if anybody has that. But I think that's where we're getting to, right? So this work I see is like building the future. I like to say, like, I feel like elders, I want to tell like other people, like, hey, farming's cool, but not only cool, these are the challenges. I want to be real with you. I want to be real what you're going into. Climate change, that's hard. This year we have a drought. I hope you know about like irrigation system. What's an irrigation system? You know, no one's really sitting down with you to like go through that. Most of the time, we have to go through it with experience. You know, try and like failure and be like, that was hard. Can you write that down so I remember that for next season? But you know, we want to build a new system that we're not only surviving, but we're thriving. And that would take time, but that's through us. That's through y'all. And you don't even have to be a farmer to make those movements. But it's understanding what farmers go through. We're not only just giving fresh, nutritious produce in the store. There's so much behind the scenes. And I really encourage like go visit a farm. Not to like animals are so cute. I get like go to the house is amazing. But talk to farmers. Like work with the land too. Like see what that's like. See how like, oh, my feet in my body hurts. Like it was a workout, you know? Farmers do that. Also do the finances, taxes, grant applications. You know, those are processes that are difficult. And a lot of the time you're doing it on your own. And the last of my rant is just like, really, being a farmer is beautiful, but it's also so many challenges. I want to highlight the ways that we can create that, especially for BIPOC farmers, when we're seeing, hey, it's hard to even buy a house. It's hard to even go to school. How am I then going to have this big future? How's that possible for me? And so I dream of a world where we can build those programs, we can build a system, we can build this like community where we're not doing it alone. Because when we come together, even through those hardships, and like even if someone's like, I'm too tired, we're gonna hold each other up. We'll say, it's okay, let me give you some water. It's all right, we got you. And that's how we can make that difference together as farmers. But we need to do it together as farm workers, but also as a community that buys our produce. Buy it from, don't just go to your local grocery store, go to your markets, see what farmers are selling local. And that's the true essence of your food, of what you're putting in your body, your health, but the community that you get to build of what you have the power to fund, right? So do it with funding into your community that involves. So that's Minnesota. I was going to say you'll never go back to store-bought tomatoes. I will never do it. It's not the same. It's a crime. It's a crime. You know, so like make that change for yourself, make that change for your children, make that change for your future. But that also changes our future. Like when we're saying them like this is for our children, that's the same thing. I see it hundreds and hundreds of years from now. But that also takes a lot of work. So thank you. I'm sorry.
That's great. I'm going to open it up and give a chance to anyone in the audience that has a question to ask. If I could ask my colleague Laura to help us, maybe could give one of the mics. And if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please raise your hand. And then while Nora is identifying who's going to ask, I do want to share, building on what Levi was saying, the advocacy that the local organizations did this legislative session worked. So they were going to change the definition of what a emerging farmer is in certain ways. And we don't need to get way into the weeds, but these advocates were meeting on a weekly basis. They were meeting with state agency staff. They were meeting with legislators. They were meeting with each other to coordinate. And they shouldn't have to do it. When we saw this in the movie, we saw that, the people that are in power can make these challenges. And
even if it's a technicality, they can win on that technicality. And even if the power should be with the farmers, they can lose. But it did work when our local farmers got together and coordinated their effort and fought back. They said they kept on it. They were sustained in their action, and they looked at the legislative language and wordsmithed it. They gave feedback on exactly what it should be. And the legislation, the language that passed this last Monday was exactly what these advocates asked for. So let's thank them for their advocacy. It makes a difference. Thank you. We have a question from the audience.
I'd like to address this to Aison. First of all, a comment. Arlene Bagow was a Humphrey Fellow right here at the University of Minnesota before she did that march. And she eventually became a congresswoman and then a provincial governor. So we should recognize her as an important person. My question is, what happened to the Somali farmers? Did they get access to credit? Did they get access to technical assistance? Were they supported? Were there supports to make them successful?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. So, because of this, just a little segue. Because of this movement, it's not enough to just have the law. So we need people who will be the voice of the farmers inside the government. So Arlene Bagao, who you saw walking, Lenny Robredo, the vice president, became the vice president. Risa Hontiveros became senator. So this was the product of the movement also, to produce leaders in government that are pro farmers, pro agriculture. When the Sumilao farmers came back, so they established a cooperative and had a marketing agreement with San Miguel to supply corn to the piggery, because they operated the piggery for a while, but eventually stopped because of non-suitability of the land. But the Sumilao farmers are struggling now to make their farms productive and to support their families. So even Bajek Jek, as you see, she is now a mother of 3 children. And when we visited her, it was a sad sharing that she said, I'm looking for another job to augment, because the farm is not producing enough for income for my family. And they are also contemplating of leasing the land to Dole, a big corporation. So this is really what happens if we don't follow through. Meaning government doesn't follow through, or consumers and people like us who doesn't care about the farmers, and just leave them alone. So we need concerted effort through making available market for them because that's what's needed when they produce products. Then this has to be marketed, and also on technology. When there are technology that are more friendly and suited to the environment. And but the Sumida farmers still own the land, so thankfully they still are struggling to make their cooperative successful. So the cooperative has 40 million asset, 40 million pesos, land and equipment. So it's a big cooperative. However, there's need for marketing and additional credit assistance probably to make their farming more successful for their families because uh, there's a pressure from the big ag companies to just take over and get their land. So that's that system of uh, they having more power in marketing, they having more power in information and in technology really pushes small older farmers out of business. So that's a challenge.
It sounds like a very familiar challenge to what we see
To
here
Minnesota.
as well. Yes, unfortunately. I think let's do one. Okay, can we do one more question? And I know we're going to run out of time, so then we'll wrap up a little bit. We'll have a little bit of a window where we can do individual kind of questions, and people can mix and mingle, and if we can have conversations individually afterwards. So we'll have one more question from the audience.
I'm really grateful that you followed up and for the question that was asked because it seems to me then that the government did not follow through on its original vision of actually creating a system for this agrarian reform. And that's why they're in the position that they are, even though they have the land. So they don't have the markets to be able to sell their goods. It's very disappointing to hear that they're considering renting the land to Dole because it's just another victory for corporate agriculture. Do you know the percentage of food that is actually consumed in the Philippines that is grown locally compared to what corporate agriculture does it dominate?
Rice is imported. So rice is the staple food of the Philippines. So we cannot produce all the rice that we eat because of conversion. So this conversion literally changes the use of the land to industrial or commercial because agricultural land is cheap. So they just go to the government and say, please reclassify this, we will buy this and make factories here. So that's the challenge of food production because the lands that are used for food are converted to the non-agricultural uses, and the farmers who are producing food will be enticed to just rent it out to multinational companies like Dole, Del Monte, who produces export crops for the consumption of the richer countries like China, the US, and Europe. So that's really a struggle, and the government should play a role in regulating and implementing the laws that will dispossess farmers. And support them in their farming. So I'm so jealous with Minnesota because I saw here a lot of programs by the government, and they are very creative in opening markets for the farmers, like the farm to school program, or the food hubs, or the farmers market. So this we need in the Philippines, and leadership in the agriculture area there is not that, you know, it's headed by a big ag company.
It is here too.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So we have similarities.
very much so. The USDA is head by people who have worked in the industry. That's just a revolving market. So.
And the same pressures on land, I think we see here too. I think one thing that really stood out to me that the farmer was sharing is how the threat is ongoing. And I think it is, I'd love to hear from the three of you how you keep your optimism and what you are optimistic about and what you can see as a positive movement forward for our farmers.
First, I am very optimistic that there is a movement on buying farmers' products and supporting them in communities. So I can see, but they still are small movement. Like during the pandemic, um, the people realized that we need food, so they realized to buy food from the farmers and from the local companies back in the Philippines. So I wish that this be sustained. And also the awareness on the taking care of the climate. Because agriculture is also producing a lot of carbon if they are practiced by the big ag companies. So going back to smallholder farming is good for the planet and good for food security, healthy food. So I'm optimistic that there's that movement now, and thirdly, I'm optimistic that you're here and still cares for our young farmers and our food producers for us. Thank you.
I guess for me, it goes back to my story, really just exploring the possibility in terms of what I can grow here that are culture. And so with a lot of the emerging farmers, beginner farmers, immigrant farmers, there's definitely conversation and sadly, with the climate and this rapid change, some of us have an advantage and a niche market to produce crops that you haven't seen in the past. And so I'm optimistic and also sad to witness this very alarming climate, but also really thrilled and excited to bring to market crops that the state could benefit from in terms of not just the ecosystem, and it's better to grow these crops honestly because they just perform really well. And like to your comment about not doing a mass growing and this continuous tillage that we see often that causes long-term harm to our system. So yeah, I'm just really excited. I think just having a conversation with emerging farmers, immigrant farmers, beginner farmers that are really excited to think outside the box and really explore different varieties that can really enhance our local food system, and it's just really good for our gut.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is I like to hone in on like self-care. Something I really want our farmers to start working on is like there's so many systematic things, but something I really want is like taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, and what that looks like. I get to work alongside like great organizations like Farm Buds. They lead farm visits with farmers that just want vacations or like time away with their family. So we're like, hey, we'll actually help you, you know. But there's also people in the world that I just see that kind of support. I want us to have these conversations. I work with a lot of Latino farmers, and conversations that we have is like it's so hard to get into markets because the moment someone answers the phone, because English is difficult for me, they don't want to work with me. What does that look like? But then I'm like, so within my job and different meetings I'm in, I'm able to go into those spaces that are within those markets and be like, hey, we need to start making our materials all translated. We need to have our trainings translated. Not just some of it, all of it. We need to have someone that can translate like on the spot. And that's not easy. That's also funding, but that's also opening up avenues for our farmers. The Minnesota Farmers Market Association just did Grow Your Green program where it's helping farmers do financial literacy. That's huge because let me tell you, having just a pile of receipts and just in a folder and that just adds up all year during the summer, and then you get to winter and you open it. I don't know about y'all, but then you're like, like I don't even want to look at this and I want to just close it back up. But then having someone go and be like, hey, and even just it could be a friend, another farmer be like, hey, you know what? Let's do this together. Let's see what this looks like. Let's just crack it down minute by minute, day by day. And like once you get the finances done, that's one thing off my plate. Actually, that will then help me look at the grants and what I now want to like buy and look forward. But then also seeing the hope of we need to have technical assistance and people that actually make this information digestible. So like grant process, that's a lot of information. And let me tell you, I read them all the time, and I even review grants myself, and that's confusing. The wording, I'm like, I don't even know how you told me your story. But it's not only just about telling your story and sharing your voice, it's also, there's so many things that they're looking for. But how would you know that? That's not gonna be on the website of being like, okay, this is how you write the perfect grant application. So we need to have people do more of that work with us. Sit down and be like, hey, tell me your story. Not even let's look at this form, just tell me your story. Perfect. Tell me what you want your budget. Great. Let's do it together. So I have a lot of optimism of doing this work together, breaking it down to make it easier, more digestible, and open pathways for our farmers when a lot of those doors are closed or might seem closed. I want to encourage our farmers that there's been so many spaces of, I've heard, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I belong here. And that comes from a lot of, especially like younger farmers are like, this is a lot. And I'll have to look at them and I have the same thoughts in my mind. I'll have to look at them and say the same thing. It's because you might have been told you weren't, but you do. You do belong here. And a quote that I've heard a lot lately, it's in Spanish, but I'll translate it in English, is they thought they could bury us, but they forgot that we were seeds. And something that's always something that sticks with me, I hope it stick with you, is even with like, if you have the metaphor of a lotus, you kind of have to sit in that muck, right? Figure it out. But then after that, having the support of growth, then there's a beautiful flower from it. And so I just want you to know that like, even if for anybody in this space that might have felt like that space is not for you, or you can't have that, or it's not attainable, I want to tell you that it is. It's scary. Oh, absolutely. But you have a community that's there with you. You now have a generation that wants to work with you. People are listening. These programs are listening. Like, educators are listening. The government's listening. So this is the time to use your voice. I tell every single person I meet, walk your truth, speak your truth. So now that you know more from this and the work that us farmers do, now you can have conversations with your friends and your family members and community organizers and politicians to be like, how can we make this difference for my local area? Then how can I make it broader to Minnesota? Then how can I make it broader to the nationwide, and then the worldwide, because this is a worldwide issue. So I just want us to know and take this, process it, journal it, figure out what it means to you, and then what it means for everybody else. Because each one of you in this room and everyone that you contact and talk about this is going to make the future for us farmers. You're starting to see it, you're starting to open it up in your eyes. Perfect, this is the time. This is the time. So just like create this new beginning for us farmers, and that's where my optimism lays within y'all. Not only just through the work that we do, because we can keep doing it, but it's through you that we need your extra support to do that. So thank you.
You guys tying it all together for us, and I think that when I saw this film and the community rallying behind the farmers, it really illustrated to me what we need to do too, and it's exactly what Levi said. And we saw this last legislative session that when you show up, it does matter. It makes a difference. If you're there, if you're submitting your comments, if you're testifying, those stakeholders who will be impacted by decisions, getting in there, being in the conversations, they can shape the policy so that it actually will positively impact them. And it does make a difference. It does matter. And we would love to have all of you join our fight too. There are a lot of opportunities for you to engage. We've referenced today the Mini Egg Network. If you're not on our listserv, when we send out the follow-up email to registrants, if you haven't officially registered, you can probably still register and get on that list if you need to. But we'll send out a link to join Mini Egg, to join our listserv. We send out updates on what's going on in the legislature. We have bi-weekly meetings during the legislative session, probably monthly during the summer. Our next meeting, where we will be strategizing, looking ahead to next year's legislative session, which is a budget setting year, so it's a critical year. There will be decisions made about how money is spent, and we want it to be spent on our farmers and the wonderful work that they do. If you want to strategize with us, next Friday at noon, we'll be meeting and strategizing, thinking about how we can engage and start preparing to make a big impact next legislative session, which is not until the beginning of next year, but actually they start making these decisions now. So we need to engage. We will share that opportunity with you. Of course, there are other wonderful local groups doing amazing work like the Metro Food Justice Network and the Midwest Farmers of Color Collective, engaging on these issues very specifically. So if you want to get involved, there are opportunities to get involved, and we need you all to get involved. So please do come and join us in our fight. Thank you for being here. Thanks especially to our panelists for being here. They are farmers, they're busy. They came all the way here to share their stories today. Thank you so much. I want to thank Aison for being such a wonderful fellow. And he's leaving and going back to the Philippines. We have a little gift, a little piece of Minnesota. We'd like you to take some of Minnesota's moment while Bryce goes back to the Philippines.
White rice.
Otherwise, with that, I think, let me see, is there anything else I need to say? I don't think so. I think we just thank you all for coming today. Thanks for being here. We hope we'll see you again in future meetings, and maybe we have a couple minutes where we can mill around and mingle, but we just, thanks so much for sharing your stories today. Thanks all of you for listening.